You ever have one of those days where you wake up feeling like you own the sky, only to realize, midair, mind you, that you're about to get a crash course in just how quickly privilege can turn on a dime? That was me, Maya Chambers, 22, usually riding the tailwinds of a billionaire legacy. But this time, I was about to find out that money and manners can't shield you from a storm of prejudice at 35,000 feet. Yeah, that happened. Let me set the scene. I grew up with everything. Chambers Global Tech, my dad's empire, private jets, a Harvard diploma that still smelled like new money. But also, this quiet rule from my father: never lose touch with where you come from. So, every so often, he'd insist I fly commercial, just to keep my feet on the ground, metaphorically, of course, since I was always at cruising altitude. That morning, JFK was its usual zoo: people rushing, some staring, maybe recognizing me, maybe not. I dressed down: jeans, white blouse, that black carry-on with my initials. Nothing flashy, but impossible to ignore if you knew the brand. I was headed to LA, meeting my best friend Sienna for a charity gala, thinking I'd land, sparkle up, hit the red carpet, maybe score some good karma before brunch.so. There I was at gate B32, scrolling through Sienna's nagging texts. Don't be late. And doing my best to blend in. The attendant, Russo, blinked at my pass a little longer than usual, but let me through. First class was its usual cocoon: soft lights, the smell of lemon towels, the quiet shuffle of tired executives. I settled in, sipped my sparkling water, tried not to look too relieved. And that's when I noticed her, T. Roberts, blonde, rigid posture, eyes cold as January. She walked by with the stiff grace of someone who's been in the service industry too long, and I chalked her attitude up to stress. You know what I mean? Everybody's got bad days. Or so I thought. Things started weird but civil. An older gentleman across the aisle, turns out he worked in data analytics, big fan of my dad, asked if we could chat later about philanthropy. I said sure. It's honestly the best part of flying commercial: meeting people who have stories bigger than any first-class cabin. Everything was cool until the beverage cart rolled up. The friendly flight attendant, Miguel, apologized for being out of ginger ale, said he'd check in back. But T. Roberts made a beeline straight for me, arms crossed, glare locked on. She accused me of making special requests, like I'd asked for the moon instead of ginger ale. This isn't a private jet, she snapped, voice just loud enough for the people in row 2 to hear. Now, I've been on the receiving end of coded insults before. Folks assuming I got here by accident, or by luck, or that my name opened doors my talent couldn't. But she wasn't even hiding it, just spit out the words private jet like they were poison. I kept it together, said water was fine. But the looks, the muttered, high-ass demands. You don't forget that stuff. Not even after years of learning to shrug it off. I caught the eye of the older man across the aisle, saw him mouth, "Sorry you have to go through that." All I could do was give a tired, polite smile that I tried to lose myself in a business magazine, but my mind was racing. I wondered, how did Dad deal with this when he was building his empire, brick by brick, getting slapped with 1,000 small indignities, and still holding his head high? I tried to keep my chin up, too. But Roberts kept circling, watching me. Even a trip to the restroom earned me another icy glare. Fast forward, about 2 hours into the flight, some turbulence hit. You know, the usual, a little bump, nothing serious. Captain comes on, seatbelt sign lights up. I start shutting my laptop when Roberts swoops in, stow it in the overhead, not the seat pocket. She barks, just as the plane lurches hard. No way am I unbuckling now. But she goes off. You think you're above the rules. By now, half the cabin's listening. I'm just doing what the captain said, sitting down during turbulence. But she leans in, voice dripping with contempt, and says, "I know who you are, Maya Chambers. You privileged types think you can pick and choose." I felt my hands shake. That's not just rudeness. That's open hostility. All the resentment she'd bottled up, suddenly pouring out. And then, the slap. She actually slapped me, right there in front of everyone. The sound of her palm on my cheek was so sharp, so out of nowhere. that for a split second I wondered if I'd imagined it. But the sting, the gasps around me, the way the older gentleman half stood, no, it was real. I heard Miguel shout, "What is going on here?" And even he looked ready to throw down. I stood up, adrenaline burning. "You assaulted me," I said, trying not to cry or scream. "Because of who I am, what I look like. That's not just a bad day, that's hate." A few voices, passengers, Miguel, spoke up for me, but Roberts just stood there, breathing hard, eyes wild. The captain's voice boomed, telling everyone to sit. I pressed the call button and demanded to see the senior attendant or captain. My phone buzzed, Sienna, wondering if I'd landed. All I could do was clutch my phone and promise myself I wouldn't let this slide. Miguel gently convinced me to sit for safety's sake, but the look I shot Robert said it all. This isn't over. I knew exactly who to call. Dad might have been in Tokyo, but he picked up on the third ring. When I told him what happened, you could hear his fury halfway across the Pacific. "Stay calm, Maya," he said. "I'll handle this." And when my dad says that, you better believe things move. About 30 minutes later, the pilot announced a mechanical issue, right? Sure, and said we'd be landing in Denver. I locked eyes with the older gentleman across the aisle. He nodded, like, "Your dad just grounded a plane." I sat there, cheek throbbing, watching as Delta staff and police boarded once we landed. The officer asked for my statement. Amanda Lee, the Delta supervisor, apologized up and down. But I said it plain, I'm pressing charges. No more hush money, no more quiet settlements. What happened to me happens to others all the time. Enough. The next day, after a sleepless night in a Denver hotel, Delta's legal and management team showed up with all the apologies and offers you'd expect: money, free flights, counseling. But I said, let's fix the system. I wanted real diversity training, policy changes, and, yes, a public apology, not just for me, but for every Black traveler who ever felt less than welcome at 35,000 feet. Holmes, their corporate attorney, said they'd work with the Chambers Foundation. I told him I'd talk to Dad, but I was taking the lead. Henry Chambers was proud, but he told me, "This is your fight, kid. I'll back you if you need it, but you've got this." The news blew up. My phone melted with calls, texts, headlines. Black billionaire's daughter assaulted on flight. Delta faces racism scandal. At the preliminary hearing, I walked in with my lawyer, Danielle Brooks, cameras flashing. Roberts looked like a ghost of herself, messy hair, hollow eyes. Her lawyer blamed stress, money troubles, a sick relative, anything but what really happened. The judge pushed it to trial, adding possible hate crime charges. Outside, I made my statement. This isn't just about me, I told the cameras. It's about anyone targeted for their race. I believe in accountability. I hope Delta's changes go industry-wide. Reporters shouted questions, but I let my words hang in the air. Delta followed through. Public apology, diversity training overhaul, seat for me on the advisory board, restitution fund for discrimination victims. Roberts got convicted, assault, battery, hate crime enhancement. She cried in court, but honestly, actions have consequences. I didn't wish suffering on her, but I hope the message was clear. Prejudice will land you harder than any turbulence. After everything, I got back on a plane, first class again, but this time, I felt different. Flight attendants were extra careful, maybe out of fear, maybe respect. I sipped my water, smiled politely, and thought about all the people who reached out, sharing their own stories. My friend Sienna hugged me tight in LA. Dad said he was proud. The bruise faded, but something else took root. A fire to make flying safer for everyone. So yeah, that one slap changed more than just my day. It put a spotlight on prejudice, privilege, and the power of refusing to sit quietly. Karma comes for us all, but sometimes it needs a little nudge, like a billionaire's daughter who won't back down, or a whole community demanding justice. Now, I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever faced prejudice in a place you thought you belonged? Where do you draw the line between forgiveness and accountability? Drop a comment, share your story, and let's keep this conversation flying. Because the only thing that should ever be up in the air is hope.